Okay, all right. So if everyone is ready, good morning, welcome, and thank you very much for attending today. I'm truly honored by your presence, especially since I announced the class so last minute and it's a weekend. And although it's a Saturday, I hope the session will feel more like a diversion than work. We shall see. So as mentioned in my outreach, I'm currently an executive educator and leadership coach, but I do have a background in law in my earlier career. In fact, the first chapter of my US life was on the East Coast, in New York and Washington, DC. I was working with large international law firms on customs and anti-dumping case. Subsequently, I went to business school at Stanford, so my life went a different direction. And since my MBA from there, I have had various corporate jobs in different industries. I've run my own business. With each stint, my career seems to get crazier and edgier. And I now research the nexus of art and science and apply that to leadership and innovation. In the world of innovation, trial and error is the norm, and even failures are celebrated. So it seems like my work is far removed from how law is practiced. However, I am still connected with the legal community as a court-certified Mandarin interpreter that I do on the side. So I often work together with attorneys in depositions, mediation, court hearings, etc. And we do have lawyer participants in our executive education program at Stanford, where I teach. And I remember one of the assignments for a decision-making class was to address the hidden cost of stressed out workers. And this young attorney wrote about her workplace, her firm. An example that she gave was her coworker who likes to send out group texts at 9 at night asking, hey, anybody still in the office want to get pizza together? She really resented this behavior because she knows that he's sending a signal that he's still working that late. So that shows the culture of the firm. That's the kind of behavior that's rewarded. Of course, this was before COVID, just shortly before, because now with the pandemic, people are not working together and getting pizzas. So it has to be some other kind of signal. So from what I observe as mostly an outsider now is not uncommon stories of people going from young, ambitious, high achievers to burnout, depression, and substance abuse. Here are some statistics, which I won't go through. I'm sure you're all familiar with these now. And to even suicide. When I was first invited to adapt this class to the legal profession, I read this, among my research, I read this heartbreaking open letter by the widow of her attorney husband at Big Law who committed suicide. Such senseless tragedy that should have been avoided, prevented. There are many different causes of mental health issues in the legal profession, including external circumstances such as long working hours and constant stress, the adversarial and often isolated nature of the work, difficult clients, high-stake cases, even exposure to dire life situations, pressure for high income to pay off student debts. One of the reasons that I didn't go to pursue JD was the high cost back 20 some years ago. I'm sure it's even more expensive now. Unpredictable schedule and very competitive working environment. There are internal factors and personality traits. Many lawyers are perfectionists with unrealistic standards of achievement and can be hypercritical of themselves for failing to meet them, which can be maladaptive. Superhero expectations with no room for error or humanness. Pessimistic thinking, which could be a side effect of law school training, legal training. There have been cultural factors for a long time. Maybe this is changing. There's a stigma around mental health, which could disqualify character and fitness requirement. So people are ashamed to ask for help and shameful to be vulnerable. So that's why Arianna Huffington said, if you were to design a perfect machine for stress and burnout, it would look very much like the legal profession. And there's no release valve in this machine, no coping mechanism against these factors. So clearly there needs to be a cultural change in the legal profession on the macro level for well-being to be recognized as an important part of a firm's existence and reputation. There seem to be promising signals that, promising signs that a movement is underway to change that. Just recently, a firm wrote to me that their New Year resolution is to improve the work-life balance for all of their employees, and their policy is to only answer calls and emails within business hours, which is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That would be wonderful, especially if they can stick to it. You would know better whether this is becoming a norm or more of an exception. A cultural change, of course, takes time, and I know this is not. I don't mean to bash the legal profession because it's pervasive among many different industries. Many tech firms, for one, are notorious for overwork. Culture change takes time. It takes leadership and collective efforts beyond a single person or even a single firm's control. So in parallel, in tandem, individuals need to learn to take better care of themselves, to embrace a shift in personal values towards self-compassion, a more examined definition of success, more really cultivating multidimensional mind, body, spirit, integrated healthy being beyond just income earned or cases won or making partner, etc. So to the extent issues may still exist significantly today, we will discuss mental health disorders affecting lawyer competence, such as, we'll go over the major types, signs and symptoms among lawyers, some preliminary tests and resources for help. We'll also discuss emotional and social intelligence, which are not only valuable for early detection and prevention, but also for sustainable productivity and growth, for healthy as well as at-risk individuals alike. Here are some major mental disorders in the legal profession, which could lead to work performance decrease and burnout, impaired problem solving, impairing decision-making, poor judgment, ethical irresponsibility, intervention by colleagues, or even discipline by the bar. Now, we often toss around some of these terms, these symptoms casually, not symptoms, but the disorders. Like people would say, oh, I am really depressed. And I myself often say, I am an OCD, or I have ADHD. But what we are discussing here in this context is clinical level disorders. On the other hand, I must emphasize that I'm not a psychiatrist. And so the information presented here is sourced from experts in the field, but accurate diagnosis should really be done by qualified healthcare professionals. Depression is recurrent, severe periods of clear-cut changes in mood, thought processes, and motivation lasting for a minimum of 2 weeks. 1 out of 5 Americans will experience a major depressive episodes at least once during his or her lifetime. For lawyers, it's 3 to 4 times that rate. Changes in mood and emotions. Well, there tend to be lots of grief, lots of sadness. There's no surprise there. Threshold to cry is often a signature of depression. If there's a change, some people just their personality, they tend to cry more than average. That's not necessarily unhealthy or abnormal, but if there's a noticeable change, that could be a sign. The changes in thought processes typically include negative thoughts and hopelessness, sometimes guilt as well. There's anhedonia, which is the general lack of enjoyment of things we typically enjoy, such as food, exercises, sex, and social gatherings. Depression also affects sleep, energy, appetite, and weight. One of the most common symptoms is waking early, middle of the night, and not being able to fall back to sleep, despite being exhausted. There are manifestations among lawyers, leaving assignments incomplete because they just can't concentrate on them. Procrastinate, as it's just so difficult to be productive. Paperwork pile up, deadline passes. Too depressed to get out of bed just because they have no energy, unable to communicate with the clients, attend meetings, appear in court, or work on client matters. These symptoms probably should be more precisely described as major depression or unipolar depression, as opposed to bipolar disorder, which is a subtype of the broadly defined depression. The word bipolar, of course, means two extremes. For the many millions experiencing this disorder around the world, life is kind of split between elation, two different realities, elation and depression, extreme highs and extreme lows. The extreme highs are known as manic episodes, during which time a person can range from being irritable to being invincible. But that euphoria goes beyond ordinary sense of joy and can cause troubling symptoms such as racing thoughts, rapid speech, impulsive actions, risky behaviors. For someone oscillating, or the extreme low episodes are more like the major depression that we mentioned earlier. For someone oscillating between these two emotional states, it can feel impossible to find a balance necessary to lead a healthy life. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a type of anxiety disorder where individuals experience thoughts or mental images that are unwanted or disturbing. These persistent, intrusive thoughts or obsessions can cause a lot of anxiety and distress. And so in response to them, we may feel compelled to perform repetitive acts called compulsions to relieve the distress. But the distress doesn't get completely relieved. It's like a rabbit hole to nowhere. OCD is predominantly due, at least in part, to serotonin deficits in the orbital frontal cortex, or OFC, of the brain. It's often a combination of genetic predisposition or vulnerability brought out by environmental stresses. Compulsive behaviors might include counting items in our immediate environment, attempting to undo a thought, visiting healthcare providers repeatedly, more than necessary, keeping items we don't need for fear that we may need them in the future. So, we all probably have some of this to varying degree, but if it's excessive, then it's a problem. Signs among lawyers include over-researching cases, over-analyzing facts, writing verbosely, arguing irrelevant legal positions, excessively reading unimportant things. And since the OFC is a critical part of the brain involved in decision-making, deficient in this area causing the OCD often leads to trouble making decisions as well. So that could be another sign. OCD is but one type of what's broadly known as anxiety disorder, characterized by excessive anxiety. Now, the keyword here again is excessive. Of course, we all experience varying degrees of anxiety in our demanding lives. Anxiety level of the general population probably has overall been elevated in the recent couple of years due to the pandemic and nasty events, other nasty events. Biologically speaking, we have a system for stress genetically encoded in us as a part of our survival mechanism. And these are actually positive They can be positive if it's acute or short-term stress. It keeps us out of danger. It activates our immune response. It sharpens our focus. These benefits could even extend to medium-term stress, which is about a few weeks or a couple of months. When we are on a big case, or I don't know, studying for exam or something. If we can learn to navigate it or raise our stress capacity. However, long-term stress is definitely bad for all the reasons that you are familiar with. Increased risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, higher incidence of schizophrenia for those predisposed to it, impairment of cognitive functions that we'll discuss more later. Anxiety can persist more than 6 months and can get worse if not treated. Lawyers, as you probably know, suffer from generalized anxiety disorder at rates higher than the general population for a variety of factors: heavy responsibility, court appearances, tough negotiations, difficult clients, cases to deal with, confrontation with opposing counsel. Some of these were mentioned earlier. One other disorder to highlight is the ADHD, used to be known as ADD, a developmental disorder and chronic pattern defined by inattention, disorganization, and hyperactivity, impulsivity, and this general inability to focus. This used to be better known among children, but apparently is manifesting more among adults as well, thanks at least in part to electronic devices and social media. Signs among lawyers: falling behind on writing reports and having a difficult time focusing on boring tasks or managing their time, struggling to stay organized, losing interest and desire to finish an assignment, developing a reputation for being chronically late, etc. Now, sometimes symptoms of a mental health disorder appear as physical problems, such as stomach pain, back pain, headaches, or other unexplained aches and pains. After all, the mind, the brain, and the body are connected. So these physical signs can be telling as well. The Lawyer Assistance Program, as you are probably familiar with, now has many resources helpful. For example, these self-assessment tests. Here I show you a couple. One is on anxiety.
I'll have you take a quick look.
And the other is depression. I will include these in the resources to be provided after the session. So if anyone needed, they can refer to them. As mentioned earlier, again, accurate diagnosis really should be done by qualified healthcare professionals. However, it's important to take note of some warning signs if you see them in yourself or someone else. Learning about these early signs can potentially decrease the severity of mental illness. In some cases, early intervention might be possible to delay or prevent a major mental illness altogether. Besides paying attention to the signs, It would also certainly help detection and prevention to get routine medical care. So don't skip that physical, the checkup. And it would be helpful, of course, to engage in self-care, meaning sufficient sleep, healthy eating, and regular physical activity. We probably all know their benefits. What I would like to add, however, is social and emotional and social intelligence, which are not only essential tools for early detection and prevention, but also ultimately well-being and thriving. I don't know if you would agree, but here are some quotes from a wellness guide for senior lawyers. This was from the State Bar of California. As a group, legal professionals have a preference for analytical thought versus emotional feelings. Attorneys often apply the same analytical approach to their personal problems and are reluctant to focus on their inner emotional lives. Some attorneys believe they should be able to handle personal problems just as effectively as they handle their clients' legal problems. Well, it's actually not that simple. So the rest of the session will shift gear towards these topics. The National Task Force for the Wellbeing Initiative, led by ABA and other organizations and thought leaders, define lawyer well-being along several dimensions of life to thrive in, which really resonate with my own growth and discovery, and now teaching in human flourishing, helping people in other professions such as management and technology. Today, I'll focus on emotional and social intelligence, although some of the concepts and tools cut across these other dimensions as well. Before we dive in, let's have a check-in first. So I would like you to write down the feelings and emotions you have had this month, and the ones that you have feeling right now at the moment. This can include how you feel about yourself, your family, your work, the world at large, about COVID, the new year, what have you. Be spontaneous, no need to think too much, just whatever comes to mind. And if you don't know how to name some of the feelings and emotions, here's a list of words that could be a cheat sheet that can be helpful. You can pick ones that resonate. So let's spend, let's say 15 seconds. And if anyone is generous to share, perhaps in the chat, you're certainly welcome, more than welcome to do so. Just the words, no context is needed.
I'll share. I came up with 4 real quick, and I noticed they're kind of on a spectrum, from excited and anxious in a positive way to feeling calm and relaxed.
That's wonderful. It's certainly normal to be on a spectrum. It's even more normal to have conflicting feelings. Great, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? So we'll touch on this later. It's a great start if anyone else have written down a few as well. So emotional intelligence, first coined by psychologists Mayer and Salovey back in the 90s, and then popularized by Daniel Gorman. It refers to one's capacity to perceive, process, and regulate emotional information accurately and effectively, both within oneself and in others, and to use that information to guide one's own thinking and behavior or actions, as well as to influence those of others. Emotional intelligence is important because it leads us on the path to a fulfilled and happy life. Research has shown that people with higher levels of emotional intelligence are more likely to be better able to resist general and mental health problems, have better physical and mental health outcomes on average. And in the workplace, individuals with higher emotional intelligence tend to be better able to work cohesively with others, navigate change and manage stress, and thus more effectively pursue objectives. Daniel Gorman recognized 5 key characteristics of emotional intelligence and posited that unlike one's IQ, these categorical skills can be learned when where absent and improved upon where present. More recently, Center for Healthy Minds at University of Wisconsin-Madison developed a measure of 6 dimensions to provide a sense of a person's emotional style and an overall picture about their emotional health and well-being. And that includes the 6 measures are self-awareness, the ability to perceive one's bodily signals that reflect emotions, outlook, the ability to sustain positive emotion over time, resilience, the ability to recover from negative emotion, attention, the ability to screen out distractions and stay focused, social intuition, attunement to nonverbal social cues, sensitivity to context, the degree with which emotional and behavioral responses take into account the situational context. So before we go any further on theories, let's do some exercises, because emotional intelligence is not just intellect, it's experienced. It's what we sense, what we recognize, and how we process. So the first exercise we'll do together is to breathe. For anyone that has a meditation process, you can just take this time to meditate a little bit. Otherwise, we breathe. We breathe from the abdomen. So take a slow, deep inhale through the nose, with your tummy sucking in all the air as if filling up a balloon. You hold it for 4 to 6 seconds. Then slowly exhale through the mouth, emptying the air out of the balloon tummy. Okay, so now sit comfortably with your feet on the floor, your back straight, hands either on your laps or in a lotus position. And let's do this for say 20 seconds. You may want to close your eyes. Okay, now let's do this again, but a little differently. So when you inhale, you push your arms up. We've been sitting for half an hour. Let's work our body a little bit. You push your arms up along with your rhythm, and you hold there. And as you exhale, you bring your arms down along with the exhale. Okay, now let's do this together. Inhale. Exhale. Up. One more time. We're all sitting in at our desks in front of the computers these days. So this is something that you could do sometimes as appropriate. Now, we take breathing for granted, but the breath is really a big deal. If you think about it, the breath is the first thing that greets us when we come to this world, and the last thing that we leave behind when we depart. The breath has not only been a staple of many ancient spiritual practices. It has been getting lots of attention in modern science and medicine as well. For example, the breathwork phenomenon, I don't know if any of you are aware of or even practice. And there are lots of different breathing techniques that leading neuroscience labs are studying that have various physiological effects. We won't get into them today, but we'll do our next exercise, which is water exercise. Do you have your water glasses that I asked you to prepare? So this is what we will do. I will demonstrate. Now I see this glass and I think, oh, well, this is one of a set of water glasses as it was a wedding present that we received many years ago. Well, over the years, the marriage failed and glasses got broken. I only have 3 out of 6 left. I take a sip and then I think, oh, well, I'm glad that we don't have as bad of a drought this year in California. I take another sip and think, I wonder what these attorneys think about my session so far. So you drink your water and with whatever thoughts that come to mind. All right, now let's drink again, this time a little differently. So I hold this glass, I feel this surface of the glass very smooth and also very moist because there's some moisture on it. I look into the clear liquid, observe its movement as I tilt the glass. I still have ice cubes in there, so when I shake it, I can hear the clunking of them. I bring the rim to my lips. I take a large sip and let it travel down from my esophagus down to my stomach and feel this cool, refreshing water in its journey. So again. Now you do it. Is there any difference? Now you can put your water glass down. So what we've just demonstrated are 2 distinct ways of experiencing the world: the narrative circuitry and the direct experience circuitry. The narrative circuitry is past and future focused. It's life through these the filter of these narratives. Direct experience circuitry is what we sense directly through our sensory motor cortex, is all the information and data as is, without any filtration or commentary. Focusing on the present moment is commonly known as mindfulness. The narrative circuitry is the brain's default. 95%, if not more, we live in this narrative circuitry. So you may be sitting in the session today and think, I wonder if the court reporter sent me the transcript. I bet it's a lot of mess given how the deposition was done yesterday. You may be at a deposition one day and hearing your colleagues asking questions, but you're a little bored and you're wondering what you might be doing for dinner for your kids in the evening. So that's the narrative circuitry that we often engage in. If the world is like a movie and you're watching this movie, narrative circuitry is like someone jumping across the silver screen, constantly making comments about what's going on, what happened, and what's about to happen. He is bad, she is good, blah, blah, blah. Whereas direct experience is like just sitting back and watching the movie unfold as is. Here's another imagery that sums up the difference. The human here has his mind full, whereas the little doggy is in the moment, just taking in the world as is. Of course, we need the narrative circuitry for our thinking, planning, our strategies, our memories and stories, our social connections. But if that's all we live by, we completely miss the actual life we're in. Neuroscientists identified these 2 types of experiences and the link between direct experience with emotional regulation. And they found that people who regularly practice direct experience have on average 50% greater immune function in the studies they concluded. What neuroscience validated is something that ancient spirituality has been practicing for millennia. In Eastern wisdom, a metaphor for the mind is water. So most of the time, our thinking mind is like this. Or maybe more recently, it's like this. Contemplative practices bring the mind to this. or like the water you just drank. It gives clarity to both our inner world as well as the outer world it reflects. There are many different paths to direct experience. For those on spiritual quests, there are the more profound paths such as meditation, fasting, prayer, and spiritual travel. But one doesn't have to be a Buddhist monk to have direct experience. There are also more natural paths such as awareness of breath, increased awareness of senses, art, music, and poetry, creative and conscious movement, dancing, sports, etc. These latter categories may not have been commonly known as mindfulness, but these are actually the territory of a burgeoning field of study called flow or productivity, because athletes and artists are masters at flow or in the zone, which is enabled by direct experience. I think was it Anna or Christina mentioned her art practice for Christmas, and that is wonderful. That itself could be a mindfulness practice when you're focused on your emotions and in that creative process. So we had a little bit of we tried awareness of breath today. I usually lead sensory exercises in similar classes for clients. And as we know that there are 5 common big categories of senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, or 7 if you also include vestibular, which is balance and movement, and proprioception, which is body awareness. One participant after my workshop said that she had never realized how raspberry tasted before then. And another one said that she felt like she had a mini vacation right on the spot after these exercises. We don't have time for them today, but you can do them on your own. The water exercise, if you recall, had a couple of different senses. You can try that with food for your next meal. Really taste and smell the flavors of your favorite dish, or when you bite into a chocolate, or when you smell something made with fragrant mushrooms, for example. And next time on your daily walk, which I highly recommend, by the way, if you don't already have that habit already. So next time on your walk, instead of talking on the phone with AirPods or thinking about your big case, look at the trees glistening in the sunshine. Listen to the birds chirping, and smell any blossoms on the side of the street, and feel the breeze. You know, you may want to wave your arms or something, get a part of your body engaged as well, and feel the breeze across your skin. So do that, because our senses are a key passage towards self-awareness. They are a practice for attention, which could be useful in various legal settings, I would imagine. And as mentioned earlier, direct experience through our senses boosts immune functions. So that is why Richard Davidson, founder and director of Center for Healthy Minds, said that I envision a day when mental exercise will be as much a part of our daily lives as physical exercise and personal hygiene. I'm sure we all brush teeth and take that for granted, but think about what kind of mental exercise, sensory or breathing, that you can incorporate into your day as well. Even if it's, we're just doing this really quick today, too short, but you don't have to do it very long either. It could be 10 to 15 minutes even, that would have a noticeable benefit. All right, now let's take a deeper look into the science behind it. Our brain has 3 parts. The oldest, labeled the reptilian brain here, governs our survival fight or flight instinct. Then there's in the middle, the limbic brain, which is the emotional center. It feels and interacts with others. The neocortex is the newest, which we humans developed. It gives us the ability to think, talk, move, create, and learn. Now, this triune model has been criticized for being a little too simplistic, and also we humans didn't evolve linearly from reptiles, so that term may not be appropriate. However, it's still considered a reasonably accurate and helpful framework for understanding brain functions. The part of the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, is where high-level thinking process takes place. For example, the deciding, understanding, memorizing, recall, and inhibition, etc. The planning, strategic thinking, problem solving that highly trained professionals, including lawyers, pride ourselves in, take place in the PFC. But the problem is the PFC is very small, only about 4% of the brain's volume. It's very energy intensive and it's serial. That's why multitasking is an oxymoron. It's serial, whereas a large part of the processing happens in the non-conscious, in the other two brains. And when those other parts of the brains are aroused, the PFC is constrained. That's why we need clarity in the brain to free up energy for the PFC so it can be more effective. Something worth highlighting is the impact of a threat response. So by threats, that could mean fear, anger, danger, frustration, confusion, and pain. When we perceive a threat we need to run away from, it triggers cortisol, the stress hormone. As a result, our field of view narrows, cognitive ability reduces. We're definitely less creative, and we're not good at collaborating with others. On the opposite side is rewards, and that could be interest, curiosity, happiness, joy, excitement, etc. When we have more of a vision orientation to go towards, it increases dopamine release, which is the pleasure and reward chemical. We have a wider perception of field of view. Our cognition increases. We become a lot more creative, more likely to have flashes of insight, helping us to come up with better solutions for problems. We collaborate with others better and make better decisions. So it's all the more important to manage emotions. Now let's do a quick check-in again. How do you typically respond to strong emotions? Now, usually the way most people deal with emotions fall into one of three categories. Suppression, which is to ignore, to bottle up. Many cultural and family backgrounds discourage children when they grow up to be too emotional. So they may be told to just ignore them and forget about their being upset, etc. So the problem is that the feelings don't really go away; they just fester, and the limbic arousal goes higher. Even though the incident may be forgotten, the feelings don't go away, and they just build up over the years, and others can sense it. So that's not healthy. Expression can be effective, and it's humanly needed, but it can be done in a poor way. And for example, acting out, which has a bad effect on both the person himself and the other people around him or her. So a more effective or better processing is regulation. And that is the cognitive and emotional brain working together to make sense of things, to get the brain in calmer, more optimal state. It minimizes limbic arousal, bad memories, or effect on others. So how do we regulate emotions? Well, we've already demonstrated two strategies. Remember in the beginning, we named our emotions. Science finds that even the mere fact of labeling your emotions helps to dampen the limbic arousal. That is why it's good to build your emotional vocabulary. We talked much about direct experience, a second strategy, and its benefits. A more powerful way of dealing with emotion or regulating it than labeling is cognitive reappraisal. And that is to see things in different perspectives and to learn from them. So this could include normalizing how normal or typical is what I'm experiencing. Reprioritizing, how does this fit in the bigger picture? How important is it in the bigger picture? Repositioning, seeing it from someone else's perspective. How would I feel about it? Distancing, both in terms of time and space, looking back 5 years into the future. From the future, how would I feel about it? If I were in Nigeria, I don't know, in Italy, looking at this situation, how would I feel about it? Reframing is perhaps the most profound, and that is to give positive meaning and even to negative circumstances, explaining or interpreting things differently. In Chinese, we have a saying, Mr. Sai lost his horse. How do we know it's not a blessing? And that is why quite often traumatic experiences and losses, and as I've recently learned, even healing or overcoming mental illnesses and substance abuse could be paths to tremendous growth. So we talk much about emotional intelligence, which is the foundation for the social well-being. The two domains intermingle just as the brain's social real estate overlaps with its emotional core. Humans are social animals, as Vivek Murthy, the former US Surgeon General pointed out. Isolation is a root cause and contributor to many of the epidemics sweeping the world today, from alcohol and drug addiction to violence to depression and anxiety. There had been an epidemic of loneliness before the pandemic, but the pandemic has made it worse for many people. Science has found that meaningful social connection is one of the most effective therapy against long-term stress and anxiety, which we discussed earlier. Social intelligence not only could enable colleagues to help each other identify mental health issues and improve well-being, of course, when there's trust, but also enhances our professional effectiveness. There are two broad ingredients of social intelligence, that is social awareness and social facility. Social awareness covers a spectrum of understanding, from empathy with another person to grasping a complex social situation of a group. Social facility builds on that understanding to create smooth, effective interactions. So people who are socially aware, skilled at it, tune into others in 4 different ways. There's primal empathy, which is the ability to sense nonverbal emotional signals, be it facial expressions, gestures, etc. They provide a great deal of information beyond whatever words are spoken. Attunement, since the words are still important, attunement is another part of social awareness, allowing us to be receptive to another person. Empathic accuracy means that you clearly understand what the other person is thinking, feeling, and intending. Social cognition takes a step further beyond individual interactions to an understanding of how the social world works. Social facility has a spectrum of 4 abilities. Interaction synchrony, that is the ability to interact smoothly at the nonverbal level. So if you observe close friends, who have known each other for a long time, or couples, you often see that they can they move in rhythm, moving together and apart as if they are choreographed. So that's synchrony. Self-presentation means the ability to present oneself effectively in any social setting. Influence lets one bring others into agreement on their opinion, or the ability to impact the energy level of a group. People with strong relationships, strong social facility, show and act on concern for others' needs. So how do we enhance our social awareness? There are two keys: listening well and paying attention. Listening well means listening mindfully. The mindfulness practice that we demonstrated earlier on objects applies to interpersonal situations as well. So you focus on the present moment, and when you drift off, you bring your attention back. Listen with empathy, being able to step into the other person's shoes in their world to feel what they may be feeling, while at the same time maintaining objectivity and distance, showing you're listening, eye contact, the verbal agreement or nodding, or even better, paraphrasing or playing back to make sure that you understood. Paying attention to as many cues as possible on different levels, whether that's verbal, what's being said, the tone of voice, or physical, the facial expressions and bodily gestures, the alignment or misalignment between what's being said and how their body acts, and also the emotional cues. Is there, what is the emotional energy? Is there a charge to it? Are there variations? The way to increase social facility can be to seek feedback from trusted colleagues and friends, or to work with a coach to build specific skills. Professional coaches work in a strictly confidential setting. Threats and reward paradigm that we mentioned earlier can be helpful in social situations as well. We all know the fight or flight instinct when our prehistoric ancestors faced a survival threat of being eaten by saber-toothed tigers or other predators. As we evolved, the human brain treats many social threats and rewards as intensely, with the same, if not greater intensity as physical threats and rewards. The workplace is a social system, and so there are generally 5 domains of social triggers that can generate both the toward and the away responses. And we summarize them as the SCARF model. Status, am I lesser or better than others? Certainty, my ability to predict outcomes. Autonomy, sense of control. Relatedness, am I in group or out group? Fairness, perception of fair exchange. Now, different people have different sensitivity to these different triggers. For example, for me, autonomy is a big thing. I don't care as much about certainty. I have more tolerance for uncertainty, but different for you, it may be different. So you can take a quick moment to think about what which ones are more important in terms of ranking how important they are to you. So this awareness not only helps us better understand ourselves, but also to help us more effective in working with others. For example, I had a coachee who's an entrepreneur and investor running a fund, and had to negotiate dissolution terms with his partner, and they just got stuck in the negotiation. It was very unpleasant. After we, in our coaching session, we talked through the issue. He realized that for his partner, status is the biggest trigger. So with that insight, he was able to adjust his approach, reframe the situation, and be sensitive to that trigger. And they came away with a outcome that was beneficial to both of them. So when SCARF threats are triggered, there can be conflicts, and sometimes these threats can be compounded with exponential effect, and they can certainly be overwhelming. So of course, a big part of lawyer's life is dealing with conflicts, and so you're all experts in conflict resolution. But awareness of these triggers can not only help you with your own well-being, so that you're not swimming in conflict yourself, on top of your clients, but it could also be another tool for resolving conflicts. Mindfulness makes it a lot more manageable in dealing with conflicts. Even though it doesn't completely neutralize, it helps us to regain focus and think more clearly. And enabling ingredients in a lot of these social interactions, whether for boosting motivation or resolving conflicts, is communication, especially mindful communication. Now, that's about what I have to cover today. It includes mental health issues, mental health impact, emotions, self-awareness, direct experience, detection and prevention, social awareness, social facility. I zipped really quickly with across all these topics with very little time on the experiential exercises. Extended edition of this class is available if your organizations or colleagues or friends are interested, along with some of these other topics that I teach as well, decision making and business model strategy. I also coach individually on many aspects of work and life beyond emotional and social intelligence and conflict resolution, productivity, balance, decision making, etc., for both your professional and personal goals, if anyone is interested. But here is time for you, for your turn, your reflection on how you would assess the state of your mental health. What from the learnings today resonated with you the most? What would you do differently, and what would you commit to? And of course, any questions that you may have, either now or after the session, you can. Here's my contact, my email. I will be sending out the paperwork for your credits, for your MCLE compliance, along with written materials shortly after this session in the next couple of days.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. It was a good presentation. Appreciated it.
Glad to hear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had I'm not familiar with the SCARF acronym. That was really helpful.
Okay.
That's something I want to think about more. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, I have. Many people have said that as well. It's very helpful, and when I use coaching, that's a very useful tool, and really gives people, oh yeah, really, that's how that's my triggers, and that I can see triggers in that other person.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you so much.
Good feedback. Sure, thank you.
I thought it was interesting that you said lawyers are good at conflict resolution, but I find that I'm not that good at that in my outside life. I agree that last part that you talked about, the SCAF, is it?
Scarf.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that seemed really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so that is, we talk about awareness, right? Self-awareness, to know where you're coming from, how you're being triggered, and awareness of the other, why this other person is reacting like that. So with that, understanding and awareness, it gives you that insight and background in dealing with conflict, right? So that's helpful. And also to reframe, when we say conflict and confrontation, that already gets us in this running away mode because we feel threatened, right? So how do we see conflicts and confrontation in a different light that makes it feel differently, right? Confrontation and conflict could be a path to greater understanding, right? Could be give us the opportunity to know the other person better, and when that conflict is resolved, for example, there could be a stronger relationship, deeper relationship with the others. So how do we see things differently? That could be helpful as well.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it. It could be a positive thing.
So hopefully that makes sense. I'm hesitant to deal with confrontation and conflicts as well. We just have different sensitivity to it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's good to have that awareness. That's a great start.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
All right. Well,
thank you for participating today. It was wonderful spending time with you. I wish you a great 2022. Safer, hopefully. I give you your weekend back, and I also wish you a healthy, productive, and fulfilling professional life.